Yep.
Wait a minute. Okay.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Newfound Liberty. I am your favorite Russian bot, the host, Sean Babcock, and I am co-hosting today with Captain Bimbotarian, also known as Jessica Ashley. We are members in the Prickle, and we are joined today here by two good friends of ours inside the Prickle, who are Geolibertarians, and today we're going to discuss what Geolibertarianism is. So I have Ava Rae, and I'm also joined with Matthew Crowley, who is also running for office. So guys, at first, let's why don't you go ahead and tell us like what brought you to libertarianism, like kind of where your journey went from, how you came across it, how you got into it, how long you've been a libertarian for. Ava, did you want to go ahead and start?
Yeah, sure thing. So I have actually been part of the party since 2010. Yeah, because I voted for Obama in 2008, and after he did not end the war on drugs and he did not end Gitmo, I left the party. So I did not even stay a Democrat for that entire term. Within 2 years, and then I was like, I'm out. I found Geolibertarianism probably, I want to say like 2 years ago. And I kind of had always felt that way when it comes to natural resources. And then upon finding it is when I kind of was like, okay, this is definitely who I am and where I kind of fall. So.
Okay, yeah. So you left the two-party system quite some time ago, but you've been a Geolibertarian for a couple of years. Okay.
Yes.
Alrighty.
Yes, but I've been a libertarian for over a decade now.
Alrighty. Awesome.
So, yep.
Alrighty, Matthew.
Yeah, I am quite new compared to Ava. Actually, quite new compared to most other people. I left the Democrat Party as well, like Ava, in 2020, last year.
You're a baby.
Yeah. I really got into politics kind of sort of in high school, but I was a month off from being able to vote for Johnson, Trump, and Hillary. So I kind of got into it then. Of course, the only thing that my school really pushed was either Trump or Hillary. I enjoyed Bernie Sanders over Hillary just for the simple fact that he was much better, not a political show like she was. And I didn't enjoy Trump at all for his rhetoric, for everything that he stood for. So I kind of felt like, that election was horrible, but I decided to stick with the party just to see. Then 2019, 2020 rolled along, and Bernie Sanders again came in. Andrew Yang, who I was totally for Andrew Yang. And finally, what was his name? Oh yeah, Joe Biden. I forget his name sometimes. Joe Biden.
He forgets his name sometimes. That's okay, dude.
That's fair.
But whenever
he does too. It's
fine. Whenever the Democrats sat there and chose Joe Biden over these two better options, and especially Tulsi Gabbard also.
Yeah, I was a big Tulsi fan. She was my girl. I was like, if it came with the Democrats, Tulsi's really good on the war issue.
Right. Once they chose Joe Biden, I call him as politically savvy as a saltine cracker.
Didn't they do the same thing to Hillary though, like in 2016? Like they chose Hillary over Bernie, even though most Democrats wanted Bernie.
Yeah. Yes. They chose the safest option. And the safest option was Hillary Clinton and Joe Biden. And after that, I was like, I can't. I don't agree at all with Joe Biden. I don't like his past. I don't like his voting record. I don't like anything like that. And then I just started researching different options, and I found Jo Jorgensen. And most of what she said, not all, but most of what she said, I agreed with. So in August of last year, I left the Democrat Party and joined the Libertarian Party.
Fantastic. Well, welcome, man. And now look at you. You're running for office too, right? What are you running for?
Yeah.
And in Florida, think about that.
Yeah.
He's a former Democrat, now Libertarian, running in Florida. We're going to take over the world, Matt.
The only thing I could run from in Florida is the Gators. So I don't.
You can't run from them either. They're on meth.
That's true.
They teach you how
Damn
to
it.
in PE here in 5th grade. It's fine. You'll learn. You learn.
Okay, I'll remember when I visit.
Matthew and I actually run a caucus on Facebook that's all about like local libertarian events and every single libertarian in all the local elections.
It's fantastic. It's
So-
called the Proactive Caucus, and you can find it on Facebook. So if
Mhm.
any of you guys are interested, just give that a little search and it'll come up, and join them. And then you can find out who might be running in your area, or just give some support to any other candidates that are running nationwide who need your help.
If you go at the top, you can click tabs and it says elections, events, or you can pick your state.
Excellent. So I know I asked. So what exactly are you running for again, Matthew?
I'm running for city commissioner of my city of Winter Haven. It's a city of 44,000 people, and I'm running to actually, we'll get into this more, but bring a split rate property tax to the city, so where people aren't paying for their built property, they're just paying for the land that they use. To bring more transparent government to the city. Increase support and budgeting for city parks, and making it easier to start a business here in Winter Haven.
Oh, that's fantastic. Well, that's definitely a step in the right direction. All right, guys. So what is geolibertarianism? I've heard a few, I've had a few ideas pitched out at me, but for the sake of our viewers, we'll go ahead and start from scratch. And once you guys want to go ahead and give your definition of what it is, or where it was that you first learned about it, like the name of who came up with it, maybe a book or something you read it in, by all means, let us know. And then I would be glad for me and Jessica to pick your brain afterwards.
God, Drew isn't in here.
I have to put the mute button on him. Like,
I know, now he gets so mad.
I'm like, no, not yet, Drew. His hand will be up permanently in the corner. Wanting the virtual talking stick.
Ava, do you want to go first? Or do you want me to go first?
Sure. So I found geolibertarianism after I joined, political compass or whatever, about a year and a half ago now. And then I found one of those matching things, where you actually fall. And mine fell in geolibertarianism, and I was like, okay, let me look it up and see what it is. And when I read more about it, I totally agreed with it, because it kind of also ties into my religious views. So I'm
Ava, can you scoot a little closer to the?
Is this better?
Yes.
Okay,
She just wants to
sorry.
see you better. She wants you to get closer to that camera.
You're so beautiful. I need to see your face.
So I'm also a pantheist. So I do not believe that God made the universe. I believe that God is the universe. And so therefore what Georgism is that it basically makes rigorous goods. So any good that is being used that cannot be used by another at that particular time, so like water, land, those sorts of things, those are seen more as commons, because when you decide to leave, that piece of land is still there for whoever's going to use it next. And so if you cause any damage to the property, then that person doesn't have to, really come in and have to deal with that. That happens a lot too with gas stations. So they'll put the gas tanks in the ground or whatever, and then they cause all this damage to the soil and stuff like that. And then a lot of new places cannot even build on top of that property, because they've ruined any of the content of that land.
The gas storage ruined the foundation.
Yeah, they devalued it, and they don't have to. There's no way for them to, fix the situation. They don't make them fix it.
There's no repercussions.
That's why you see abandoned gas stations all over the place. So we don't see any rigorous good as something that is to be owned outright. So for example, with the land value tax, as Matthew was speaking on earlier, you are not taxed on any of your man-made property that you may put on top of the land. So that is what we believe is part of a free market, is anything man-made. And then anything that is not, so to speak, like I said, a rigorous good would be, that's when you put in a land value tax. And it's not from arbitrary number that the government makes up either. It's based on the free market, is what the tax would be. Because I don't trust the government to make up numbers anyways.
So you would use the market like
That's
demand. You'd use like the market demand for like the use of the land in order to evaluate what kind of tax should be put on it.
Or to be voted on.
Well, that too, either or. I mean, honestly, it depends too on how the local community will want to use the land value tax. Some models use it as a universal basic income that would be local, because we still are libertarians, so we want it localized, because a local ecosystem would know what is best for their, what they need. They're going to know what's best for their land, for their water source, that sort of thing. And what it also does is it protects the people that are there that are using the resource. So like, let's say a bottled water company comes in and they want to bottle this water and they want to sell it, right? The community would go, okay, this is, what you would have to pay back to the community for taking that resource, because the farmers use the water too. It's not just yours to take, because if you do take that and you take that resource away from the rest of the community, then the farmers don't have water. Then, you have situations even like Flint, Michigan, because we don't believe that the state should outright own it. And we don't believe that any, collective should outright own it, because we all have a right to access those resources. You have a right to clean water. You have a right to, a physical space. All humans need physical space,
Mm-hmm.
So it's a little different in, how we perceive private property. Like, I believe in private property, that's man-made though.
Mm-hmm.
So
like
you
a
put
house that was built.
Yeah.
So like a house that was
Yeah,
built
you're
on
totally
a
allowed to
property
protect
would be
your house.
considered, or on a piece of land would be considered a private property ownership, because the house
Yeah.
itself was
Yes.
man-made. Okay, but not necessarily
Yes.
the property that it's sitting on though. That one is
No, yeah.
okay.
What if it's a man-made island though?
That's a good question.
Well, then they had to pay for the island to be there.
I knew this question was going to come up. So when Henry George wrote like Progress and Poverty, there was no such thing as artificial islands or anything like that. But honestly, if you're able to make a resource, like if you were to design a building, because I'm in the construction industry. If you were to design a building and that building made its own water source, you shouldn't have to pay for it. You know what I mean? Like, you made the water source. It's not like you're taking a water source from a community.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I was curious on
totally
that too,
different.
because also different types of materials are considered resources depending on the public demand for it. So what normally would just be a basic material in the earth becomes an actual resource depending on how man can use it. And so I was curious, it's like how those types of resources get established, types of material and stuff.
Well,
So, like,
it would be rigorous. So
Mhm.
if like you're using it and somebody else can't use it at the same time.
Okay.
Like if you have it, like air is not like that. You know what I mean? Like air, we breathe and everybody's breathing it around us and it kind of goes wherever.
Right.
Obviously.
So pollution would be considered a rights violation, right?
Yeah, it would be under a Pigovian tax.
Yeah.
Okay. So you would either have to
because-
pay for the amount to pay because of the damage that you're causing to the environment by polluting it, or like as in like a fine or something to the community that you advertently polluting, or would it just be you would not be allowed to do that at all because it's considered a rights violation?
Or would you hit them?
It would the main way that it's usually done is through a Pigovian tax.
Mm-hmm.
Some more mainline Georgists, not Geolibertarians, but mainline Georgists advocate for Pigovian taxes, which is taxes that not only disrupt you, but disrupt your community, such as water pollution, air pollution, land pollution, runoff, things like that. If it can harm someone else down the line, then you, the original source, should pay for that. whether
So,
it
like,
be
if
through a
I'm-
tax or a fine or something.
So everybody upstream from me is fine, but because on my area of the stream where I'm dumping oil or something into the river, I am violating the rights of everyone below.
Right.
Correct. Downstream.
What
from
about
those.
instead of saying tax, it's like an environmental reparations fee?
There could be many names for it. Yeah.
I don't know. Anytime I hear taxes, I'm just like,
Well, to be honest,
Just
it wouldn't be a
like the
tax if
land
it's
value
only going to
tax
the
can
person
also-
who's if it's only going to the person who's if the only the person who's affecting the land or the resource is the one being taxed. It's not really a tax. It's kind of like a fine.
Yeah.
You're being fined.
It's
for
like
polluting it.
the land value tax can also be called community rent.
Okay.
oh, then you're gonna get all the people who hate landlords if you say rent.
Everyone's a landlord. It's
I
fine.
know, but there are people who hate them,
There are
and they're
people
loud.
who think that it's a violation.
Both sides come at us.
Yeah,
it's
because
fine.
we are not,
We're everyone's
like,
worst
we
enemy.
want to seize paychecks, but hey, we're not really for landlords either, because like they're making a bunch of money off of land they didn't make. Like they made a building, you know what I mean? But now they have like all these people on this one piece of property and they're making all this money off of them and they didn't make that land.
Mm-hmm.
So like we wouldn't, obviously then, if that's the case, then that land value tax actually comes from those tenants' rent.
Yeah.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Mhm.
So that land value tax is then coming, and it actually would help housing crisis in inner city.
Mhm.
It would like greatly would help the inner city housing crisis.
So, do you
And-
guys believe in private ownership of land or just the property on the land?
Yes, we believe in private ownership of land with a caveat of since you did not make that land and you're taking the right, it's called a privilege of using that land away from someone else. Even though you didn't make it, you're using the privilege of that land, then you should be taxed for that. Not
the people
taxed
that
or
were-
rent, what have you.
But then the people that are taxing us that we're giving money to are making money off of land that they also didn't make.
Here's the thing though, and this goes to a different portion of Progress and Poverty. It states that that money should only be used for essential government services, and then the rest of it be distributed out in a non-bureaucratic, what Henry George called a citizen's dividend. What we call today a universal basic income, he called back then in 1879 a citizen's dividend, where it's non-bureaucratic, it's automatic. It's like what they do in Alaska.
But who distributes the money that then goes back to the land, and who decides what is considered going back into taking care of the land?
It's non-bureaucratic. It's an automatic thing.
But how much? But how much? Like because it's your.
It depends on the
talking about-
community.
Yeah, but you're also
There
talking
are
about
different.
the money
course
going
you would
through
get-
more or less a smaller government, but the government's still going to be the one that has to decide what is and isn't considered a need and how much to use and how much to spend.
Yes, this isn't an anarchist theory. There will be a government there to decide things like that, but there would be more democratic control in
It would
that
be a local government.
Right.
Yeah, always.
Yeah.
We're never talking state. I'm never talking federal.
No.
Okay, so this would be like county. Would it
Communities
be
would
like
have
county,
more
or would it be
control.
like town, or
if you would want to do county,
Because here in Florida, our property taxes are actually county based.
okay?
yes, they are.
So it would work a lot like that. It wouldn't change much here in Florida. In other
No.
counties of other states, it might.
Yeah, it's the same here in
but-
Arkansas.
Right. It's county based. So
I don't know about
Whenever-
Colorado.
right. Whenever you go and they want to hike up property taxes or what have you, or hike up the land value tax, instead of them just voting on it and it being in the next budget, it would be more democratic. You would have to vote on it.
Yeah, it wouldn't.
So
be
every
something
citizen would have to have a say-so on whether or not the money was spent, not just elected officials.
Right.
Yes.
It's more democratic.
Yeah, the
You
community.
get a lot of people to not want mindless spending for stuff you don't need. I guess that would be in your favor, would it not?
Yeah.
I can get on board with that because it's basically like voluntary. Like you get to decide on what you want your money to be spent on, and it's not
Yeah.
these people who have never interacted in your community spending your money.
But if everybody would have to have a say,
It's-
then you'd
it's
actually
you
have to
guys
convince
spending
everybody to
the
show
money.
up to
Like,
vote
it's the
too.
community spending the money.
Well,
Yeah.
whenever it comes to your money, I would hope that you would show up to vote for it.
Yeah,
like
you'd-
whenever
I don't know. Biden's
whenever-
president, so
Whenever
Just mail it in
Polk
to vote.
County was doing, which is the county I live in, whenever Polk County was doing, we're going to raise our tax 0.5%. to like fund free transportation, there was like a 87% turnout for vote to that.
That's good.
And it ended up voting no. But every single time there's like a tax, increase, decrease, whatever, there's usually a higher voter turnout, because then that's people's money that can go and that directly affects them. So yes, like I want to see what's happening in I can't really remember the name, Burkesville, Minnesota, where Cara Schultz is. She passed through to where every single year the citizens of her city vote on their budget, not the elected officials, but it goes to vote.
So then all the citizens get a say in what the budget's going to go to. Well, that's more in the hands of the actual community. So I'm for that.
People.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I do like
that. That's why when people like call us a land commune, I'm like, you don't understand the full context then of geolibertarianism. You think we're not like seizing everybody's land either. It's not like we would just take everybody's land and say, you can't have it now. You would still, whoever bought that land would own it still.
So then this would be the answer to the roads, right? Your roads would be able to be taken care of because of the tax from the lands, right? And then
it's called Henry George
wanted it that way. Yeah.
Henry George called it the single tax system, to where you would then be able to get rid of all other taxes.
Yep.
Because of land's an inflexible resource. Not a lot of it can be created, Jessica, out of the ocean by dredging. Costs billions upon billions of dollars to do that. So in everyday practical life, land is an inflexible resource. Therefore, unlike income or sales taxes or what have you, that can fluctuate year by year, you know exactly how much money you're going to be getting from the land value tax, unless like if it's on a local level, city annexation and whatnot. But you know exactly how much you're going to be getting. You know what to budget for, so that way there's no deficit, surplus, what have you, because well, now you know. So yeah.
Instead of budgeting without having to do it, it does it for you. Like they wouldn't, you wouldn't have to have them doing. I don't believe in government making the budget anyway. I don't think that's something that they should be doing. Maybe they should oversee what our money goes to, but overall, we should be deciding where our money is going. Clearly, with Joe Biden and doubling his budget for police, I guarantee you that most of the people who voted for him would have not wanted their tax dollars going to that.
Yeah.
So.
Would just like to say that the dude who made the island, Matthew, did not spend millions of dollars. He made it out of recycled water bottles, and it's about 5 acres. That's all I want to say.
Okay.
Well, if he made it out of recycled water bottles, then it probably wouldn't. I wouldn't want him to be taxed on that, because he's reusing something that was man-made.
Like it's made out of like a whole bunch of recycled stuff, but I know that the first layer is made out of water bottles, and like the second layer is made out of like third recycled materials, and it's like super deep. It's like 5 acres. It's huge. It looks like a trash island, but he lives there.
But he put it in water. It's in the water.
Yep, he built it in like a lake.
So I am gonna go into, like, Ava, you were amazing at the explanation of geolibertarianism. Do you mind if I go into more of Henry George himself and what he said?
Of course, go.
Right, because the basis of this whole political philosophy is an economist named Henry George. It's Georgism. It's his philosophy. Even though it's not his philosophy, the land value tax was actually much older than Henry George.
Oh yeah.
In fact, if you know Thomas Paine, of course, the great American writer, he actually wrote a pamphlet called Agrarian Justice, where he advocated for communal rent 120 years before Henry George was born. Adam Smith, the granddaddy of all modern economics, said communal rent, landlordism should be taxed, and that's the only thing that should be taxed. And the ANCAP, daddy, Murray Rothbard, even said it was the least bad tax of land value taxation.
The least bad.
Yeah.
It's still
least
theft,
bad
but it's the
tax.
least.
If
the
it's
least
gonna
bad.
happen, this would be the ideal and only one, right? Is that okay?
Right. It is the most fair tax.
Mm.
But Henry George was a man that was born in Pennsylvania. He wrote a book called Progress and Poverty in 1879. Well, Progress and Poverty up to that point was the most widely owned American book up to that point. He was, even Teddy Roosevelt, whenever he was running, whenever Henry George was running for New York mayor in 1886, he actually placed ahead of Teddy Roosevelt, the Republican Party. Of course, he would have won if not for corruption in New York City under Tammany Hall and all that history. But he placed ahead of Teddy Roosevelt at that point, an established politician who was a war hero and what have you. So his ideas were widely accepted. Everybody loved his ideas. And whenever it comes to his philosophy, he said, nothing should be taxed but the value of not just land, but unimproved land. So while you can build stuff on your land, whatever value of that land is unimproved, that's what should be taxed. And he was also for, free trade, free movement of people. Back then, the secret ballot, because ballots weren't secret back then. And he was also for the tax of, as Ava said, water, air, and natural resources such as oil, gold, silver, platinum.
Keep what you make and then pay for what you take.
Right.
Is like.
John, I think you're frozen.
I am frozen. I'm waiting for it to allow me to turn on and off my video camera.
Or you were just in deep thought. I wasn't sure.
It's a very deep thought. A very deep thought. I'm really dwelling on this right now, you guys. Like, I got a lot to consider now. I'm writing down names of books and shit. So
Going to Audible, look them up.
There will be some research. I'll be having some fun doing word after this though, because it's an interesting concept.
Audiobooks.com, because I'm a big audiobook person. They have Progress and Poverty on there.
Yeah, I already got that one written down, so I'll just try the audiobooks.com.
The verbiage is very 1800s. Just a heads up.
I've read that kind of shit before. It doesn't matter. Don't bother. My mother was an English literature major, so none of that stuff bothers me at all. Yeah.
And I mean, do we all know the very popular game Monopoly? We all do, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm always the banker. I love that game.
Always the banker. That's a little sus, Jessica.
It is. It is.
She's like taking hundreds out.
I do. I totally embezzle in that game, so I don't recommend anybody plays with me.
It's all some 2 for you for pass and go, and 3 for me.
Exactly.
Right.
I'm like, I'm
for
just
being
gonna.
a banker this round.
It's my.
You run out of
pay,
cash. Do you have to
fine.
call the Federal Reserve and be like, "I need more money. Would you please send it my way?"
Technically, Monopoly starts with a universal basic income. If you think about it, you all get the same amount of money.
It does.
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah.
I was like, for pass and go, what does
In
that
fact,
even mean? Is that my tax
there's a
return?
reason why. Yeah,
Right?
There's a reason why. Is because the original version of that game was called the Landlord's Game, and it was created to show why monopolization of land was a bad idea. While it's good for one person, it sucks for everyone else.
So because I'm always the banker, am I the guy?
You're the government.
She's all, no, I'm the centralized government.
Oh, when you
no.
hate, when you become what you hate. Oh no.
Didn't even know it. She knew where the power was, and she went right for it every game.
Smart, man. I don't know.
And everybody wants to call us, like Ava said, land commies and whatnot. Well, never, in fact.
Drew, we're looking at
right.
you.
Yeah.
Karl Marx actually hated Henry George and his philosophy. He said it was a backward step towards social equality. But other very famous people around his time, Helen Keller, loved the idea of Georgism. In fact, you see it in countries today. It's not a dead economist, idea. Like sadly, Murray Rothbard and anarcho-capitalism. Georgism is actually in effect in multiple countries and states here in the United States today. Singapore runs off of a 99-year lease of land. As I mentioned earlier, Alaska with their permanent fund, all the natural resources are state-owned or what have you, and they distribute out a check, I think yearly, of like $1,600, which isn't a lot of money, but it's good to know that I'm going to get that $1,600.
It's better than no money.
Right.
Yeah.
And Pennsylvania uses land value taxation, the whole state. That was actually Henry George's home. So, I mean, it's not some dead economist's idea. It's been utilized and used in multiple countries and states today.
And it used to be a really popular idea, from what you were saying. Yeah. Okay.
It used to be an extremely popular idea. Franklin Delano Roosevelt liked his ideas. Teddy Roosevelt liked his ideas. There used to be what's called single tax colonies, or cities that popped up using Henry George's philosophy, and they were really successful until it came to the point of state taxation and whatnot. Then it kind of did unravel, because this ideal does kind of fall apart a little bit whenever you talk about state taxes and federal taxes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So
if you're having to also pay for a state tax when you're trying to get your whole community in line with this specific, economic creation here, that's only supposed to affect you and the actual community that you live in, when you have outside sources plucking money from you and the rest of the citizens who are trying to keep it together, that's where it kind of falls apart.
Yep.
Yeah, it does. And that's why, we whenever we talk to anarchists and whatnot, we say, wow, like the train analogy, we're all on the same train together. Geolibertarianism is a stop on that train, because we also believe in getting rid of the income tax, sales tax, tariffs, open borders, and what have you. We
want open borders. Just for anyone listening, he didn't mean get rid of open borders.
Right.
He means we all want open borders.
Right. We are a minarchist philosophy. We believe that there is a place for government, a very limited place for government, that is to protect the rights of people, of everyone. But you can also have your anarchist capitalist community right next door.
That works. That's a little something that, you're not having to force somebody into it, but you can have your own different separate communities with this idea. That's pretty awesome.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And an economist who sadly passed away not too long ago, Fred Foldair, the actual person. Yeah, he coined Geolibertarianism.
Yeah.
He's the coiner of the term? Okay.
Yeah. He sat there and also came up with the idea of geoanarchy.
Okay.
Which is the Henry George's philosophy in an anarchist society.
It's interesting. What was his name again?
I might be more up to listen to, up to hear that one.
Yeah. Well, that would be where it is a universal basic income. That there's no, it is whatever the land value is. It is then just a universal basic income, or it would just be rebated back from your rent. So right, isn't that it? Basically you wouldn't pay this portion, you just keep it.
Right.
Instead of paying it to anybody, you keep that portion, rather than giving it to your landlord. You're allowed to keep it.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's the LVP.
And of course,
whatever you want to call it.
Well, so then there would still be ownership. So there would be one person who owns the particular building, right? Mm-hmm. Then the inhabitants would only be paying toward what the tax on the land was.
Yeah. That's it.
Okay.
It wouldn't be towards any of the building, because so basically, if you think about it, rent and taxation, they're both money to go towards services, right, that you would not want to do yourself. So if you're in a high rise, you're like, oh, I have a pool, but I don't want to maintain it. Okay, I'm paying rent to be able to get these amenities like a gym and this and that. And
You're paying for the maintenance and service on those so that you can collectively use them.
And that's kind of what, you know, if we look at how taxes are, what they should be anyways, they shouldn't be lining in the pockets of politicians. What they should be is the money that you're putting towards any of those services that you wouldn't want to do yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So in that respect, then basically that's why we say that LBT would mostly come from rent, and it would mostly affect inner cities because that's where you have people that are going in and there's only so much land, but there's so many people, right? So you have this many people on this small portion of land, you know, they still have a right to access that land, technically, even though they aren't the owner of it. But if, you know, you have a bunch of people, there's only so many people that can buy that land in that area. Like look at Japan, you know, they are on a very small island. There's a very high population. They would probably really benefit from a land value tax. Look at New York City, you know, same concept. It's when you have a lot of people in a very condensed area where it would affect those areas the best. I wouldn't even say the most, so, I would say the best.
All right, so let's say the person who owns the building, he's paying for the land that the building is sitting on, like the tax for the land that the building is sitting on, and then the residents on the inside of the building are paying toward that same tax through their rent. And they're also paying for additional things like upkeep of the building, and that's more or less his job. Is that how he'd turn a profit? Is more or less kind of being like a maintenance person or keeping up on the building?
Well, that would be the rent that goes to him. He's keeping up with that, you know?
Right.
And then this portion is going back because they need to keep up with like the water supply, and it actually makes a free market for things that would become a natural monopoly, like the water systems. You know, like
right?
Because like now you are all paying towards it, and you get to say what's happening with it, rather than the government saying this is your water system, and you have to, you know, use the water that's coming out, you know, and you know, like Flint, Michigan. It should never happen with somebody's water resource. Nobody should be able to harm the way you need water to live. Nobody should be able to infringe upon your right to have water. Doesn't matter who it is. I don't care if it's a corporation or a government. I don't want any of them to be able to do that. That's why I don't believe in corporate personhood. Like, that's not something, you should never make an individual be equal to a collective. That's not how this is supposed to work. The individual has the right to the water, has the right to the land, you know? It's not like, I find it funny when people try to make it out to be like we're trying to steal land. Like I said earlier, like that's not the premise of it at all. It's to make sure that everyone has access to it and that it creates a free market where there would be none.
Right. So like
I think of it as I think of it as if you're on a piece of land and you want to homestead that land, you should pay back to the community for, you know, the protection of that land, for the police services, the fire, the roads, the water supply. That should be paid back to the community. Anything you build on top of that land that adds community value, that's yours. That's yours. All of that is yours. We're not going to, the city, state, whatever, we're not going to touch that.
But do we get discounts if we build something that like benefits the community?
Well, the discount is, you know, we're not touching it. The government's not going to touch that income. They're not going to touch that property. That is yours. And
so if I build a hospital, do I still have to pay property tax? That's basically what it is.
No, it's not property tax. Because property tax is the land and any of the property that you put on top of it.
So land tax. So if I build a hospital that helps people, do I still have to pay land tax, or is it like
you'd have to pay the same land tax that you'd be paying before, right?
That is up to the local community if they want to offer a discounted rate or pro bono land, what have you. That's up to the community.
Well, it also depends on what kind of hospital, right? Because maybe if you're doing just a private hospital that people have to pay for the services, then it doesn't really, I mean, it benefits in the community for its existence being there, but it's still profit that's coming into your pocket by using this as a private hospital.
A fire station, an animal rescue.
Well, I'm just saying that there's a difference between the two. So if you were trying to like open up a free clinic on your own land, then there would need to be some kind of negotiation for what you're providing for your fellow community members, correct?
Yes.
In ratio to being like,
is it
I'm running my
sad
own
that
private
like
hospital.
the idea of a free clinic didn't even pop into my head? Like, is that sad? Not that like I want to make profit off of it. It's just like the literal idea of a free clinic. It's not something that like pops into my head. Maybe in other countries people do, but here it just doesn't.
Right. And, you know, that's up to our culture and whatnot, because a lot of our hospitals are private. We do have a few government or very nice people who open up free clinics and what have you. But if you're going to like a free fire station, well, fire station in a Georgia Geolibertarian society would be ran by the local government. That's what your land taxes would be going towards, is a fire station, is a fire department, firefighters, police.
So unless she's building a station for the particular government, she would be building a competitive on private scale station that would still, all that money would go pocket into her, and she wouldn't need to be taxed on the actual station.
A homeless shelter.
You don't have to keep making things up. It's going to be like plus or minus. Like, I'm just saying that like you still don't get taxed anymore just because you, whatever it is that you decide to build on your land. I mean, what they were saying is if it was something that was open, if it was open for like the whole community.
Taxed more, right. The only way you get taxed more is if you own more land.
Yep.
That's it. If you hold more land, you are holding more of the privilege of that land. Therefore, you should be paying back into the community more.
But it also has to do with accordance with what kind of resources is on said land, right? So say I got a quarter of an acre, but my neighbor has a quarter of an acre that's got a spring on it, a water spring. Would their tax be higher than mine because they have a water spring on it?
Yes, probably because of the value of the land is probably higher.
Because the value of the land would increase.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What if I find a piece of land, let's say it's 5 acres, and it was absolutely destroyed by the previous person who resided on said land? What if I fix it up? Like I'm adding something to it. Like I have a tiny little wooden log cabin, and like I spend most of my day like fixing up the land, like planting trees, like helping it. What about then?
Tilling it,
that
making
would
it
be
better.
up to the community. Yeah, that would be up to community discretion then. Negotiation with your local government saying, hey, I'm fixing this land for you. Can I do a discount on the tax? Can we negotiate a special?
But what if you're just fixing it for you? Like you
I'm
don't
just
necessarily
fixing
plan
it
on
to
handing
fix
the
it.
land back over to anybody.
In essence, you're fixing it for the community.
I'm
Okay,
fixing
got
it
you.
for the planet.
All right,
So
but
if you
before
die-
what would
Which is
be
the community.
That
But-
land's still there, and
Yeah,
now you
but-
fixed it. So
okay, but before what would have been considered
Beforehand,
like
with
docile
ruined
land that
land.
people wouldn't be able to
Right.
reside on because it was in bad condition, but we went in there and changed
With
that.
ruined land,
yeah,
it goes off of property value or land value. If it's ruined land, it has awful land value.
yeah, you probably won't pay much of a tax to begin with.
Yeah, because
Okay,
your
so but
property
when you fix it
value
up, then you would be
is low.
essentially you're putting your time and effort into fixing up this land so that futuristically you'll be paying more in land taxes because you're increasing the value of the land.
Well, no, wouldn't that only apply if I sold the land after I fixed it and then the person who bought it bought good land?
That was a good
Like, if
question.
I
think
get
that would be
shitty
up to the
land-
community, but I would agree to that. I would agree to that. Yes.
Like if I get shitty land and it takes me a couple years to fix it, and let's just make it easy, I'm paying like $2 in tax, just to keep it super simple. It's shitty land, I'm paying $2, but after 5 years I fix it, my tax then shouldn't go up to $20 because I fixed it. That should be the responsibility of the person who buys after me.
This does actually, it is very common to the whole, if we're running it off of land value and the actual value of the land based off of the free market, it would go up for the simple value that for the same reason, if in modern society, If you fix a rundown house, your property value goes up. Therefore, your taxes go up.
Yeah, I
Well,
built
then why
a
would anybody
I built a privacy
buy-
fence on my
Why
land.
would
My property
anybody
value
buy?
went up.
Why would anybody buy a rundown house to fix it up? People
They're
do it all the
usually
time.
flippers. Usually they don't, like, statistically, people who buy rundown houses to fix them are flippers. So they're not
Right.
buying it
Not to be confused with the
build
famous
it
dolphin
and
in
then
the
live
90s.
in it.
Right.
Dolphin?
And
The
people
famous
can
dolphin in
still
the
do
90s.
that.
Flipper.
people can still do that in a Georgist and in a geolibertarian society. They can still flip land if they want to flip land. What it discourages, though, is what's called land speculation. If you're holding a piece of land in the middle of a city, not doing anything with it, because your surrounding community is building up, raising the property of that, or the value of that property.
Mm-hmm.
In a Georgist society, the only thing that's being taxed is that land. Therefore, you are more encouraged to use that land because you're going to be losing money every single year. And it's going to do nothing but raise the value of that land, therefore raising the tax on that land.
Yeah, and then you
The
can
only
just
way
sit
to
on
properly
it,
establish land
and then when you want
value.
to sell it for more than you bought it for.
Yeah, well, the
What
only
was
way to
that, Sean?
establish the actual land value too that you're going to be taxing on, right, would be the collective opinion on what the land would be worth, right?
Right. The free market opinion.
Yeah, what the community
Right.
decides. Like if you have a nice
And
area in the
modern
middle of
property
town, they consider that a
appraisers,
good
right.
spot, right? So then you'd pay more on that property. Somebody who's maybe just like on the edge of town, has a small patch of property, would be at one rate, but their neighboring, like I said before, that had also happen to have an additional resource on it, that would be a little bit more increase, but you wouldn't have any increase in the property value from just building a house on it or like putting a barn
Exactly.
on it or
Nope.
Right.
but what about if you turn the land into like a farming land? Would that increase the value of the land?
It's just land. Yeah.
So even
You
if you started
may
growing
made
crops
the
on it, it would still just be
You
Right.
man-made
the land.
the crops, though. You know what I mean? You man-made the crops. That is
Your time and
fully-
energy went into
Yeah.
those crops.
Okay, so
That
then
is
that's direct
fully
manipulation of
worked.
what the human did to the land. That would be considered their
Right.
private property, right?
Yes.
That's where your guys' property right belief comes in.
Yes.
That's interesting.
Right.
That's very interesting.
Yeah. Because
So-
It's not what I thought it was. So I'm more open to it now because originally
No, this is why I
Yes,
wanted to
it's
have this
communist.
episode,
If
Jessica.
you're-
This is why I wanted
if-
to have this episode.
Sean, if you're in the middle of town and you're holding a vacant plot of land and your taxes keep going up, it encourages, it's not forcing, but it encourages you to use that land, to
Mhm.
build a business on that land to offset the taxes.
or
So that way
or
you are no
exchange
longer-
it with somebody else, kind of.
Exchange
then
it with
move away
somebody
from
who
But
that.
why
will
would the
use that
taxes
land.
keep going up? Because you keep
Because
saying
the
that like
property, because
well,
the
you keep
value
s-
of that land.
you keep saying that it's only the land that gets taxed and it's not the like man-made property on the land, but you keep saying that when people build up their land, the taxes are going to increase.
The
Why
taxes
would
of
they
the land
increase?
around them go up.
Why?
Because it is a more prime location.
Because
the-
it's the increase of population. So when you have more people living in an area, you're gonna have more taxation because they are all paying the land value tax. So the more the population increases, then the more taxes that government will end up garnering. Does that make
So
sense?
you're not
that's why it's
saying-
better for inner cities. This is
So
really
you-
for inner cities.
So you're not saying the cost of the property tax goes up, just the amount of people who move into the city now also paying their own property tax goes into the community pot.
The
Right.
land value tax is going up because there are more people around.
Right.
Okay,
The
so like the
community
total,
is getting better.
like
Yeah.
the price itself isn't going up, but the amount of people paying it is going up.
Into it,
Right.
paying into it. And so because the amount of people paying into it going up, then
Okay.
it
So-
rises with the market. Because that's why houses cost more in an inner city than they would out in a rural area.
Because of convenience.
Free
Location.
market, that's how the free market works. You know what I'm saying? So that would be the exact same thing with the land value as well.
Right.
Okay, so then that is subject to
And
change.
if-
Land value can change
if-
depending on increased population, more convenience, more ability for resources or goods
Yeah,
that
yeah.
surround you or are closer to you
It's
in a
not
convenient
taking
way.
out. It's not. it's not trying to remove the fact that the free market says that since this is a prime location, people are more willing to pay a higher price for it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's using the free market and setting a price, saying that since this land in the middle of town is much, much better than the land 40 miles away, or like 10 miles away in the middle of the woods, more people are more people are going to want the land in the middle of town.
I want the land away from people. So would my land be cheaper?
Mostly if they want to start
your
a
land
business.
would be cheaper.
I'm cool with that.
Yeah.
Right. Your land would be cheaper.
That's why when Drew gets on me, I'm like, dude, this wouldn't affect you. You live on a farm. In the middle of
Right?
Drew
He doesn't even have the Wi-Fi to download new apps.
He doesn't even have a
Like,
proper fucking road going out there. He'd be paying the $2. He'd be paying the $2 land tax.
So, but well, because not only is increased population, you know, because it just the way the market works. That's why I say it's taking anything that would become a monopoly and it makes a free market.
Right, like water.
Because now, yeah, like now, you know, the value of the water, because of supply and demand in an inner city, there's more demand because you have more people, right? But there's a lot, probably less supply, right? So that would increase the value of the water. So you would pay higher for, you know, the LBT on water on inner cities. And that's typically where more money is created because there's more production in inner cities. So when you think about labor, and you think about basically when you have one person doing one thing and another person doing another thing, you're making things more quickly to be produced, right? When you divide up work, and you will have more of that in an inner city than you would if you have to do everything out on yourself because you're living out in the middle of nowhere. You kind of have to do things more on your own. That's why you have a gas station that you can also get your hunting license and your fishing license, and you know, because they don't have all of those services that are amongst several people. The services would be amongst one person, so the production is probably not as fast. It's not as efficient, and that goes directly in correlation with population and why those prices would go up, because it is usually typically a supply and demand ordeal.
Okay. So animal population would be considered resource, right?
Yeah, that's a resource.
I was like, I heard her mention hunting licenses. So I'm like, okay,
yeah,
hold on.
I would consider, well, I don't really believe in licensing. I don't believe that you should pay for the license in order to be able to fish. I believe you should pay for the fish.
Okay.
Does that make sense? So like, you shouldn't have to pay the government in order to go fish, right? Because then that's not letting the person be able to, it's infringing upon the right to access that resource. The government is at that point.
Okay, yeah, because so the government's not allowed to step in there. But how do you determine?
People that can afford the license can do that, right? But then once you kill, you know, something in the wild, then you would pay for
to tag
that animal versus the license to kill those animals.
So you're paying for a tag. I know the tag system. I've used it. Just so it would be a tag essentially. You just pay for. I got a tag for 5 fish, so then I can go get 5 fish with my tag.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. I was curious as to like what would classify the. I mean, would you go by animal scarcity for the pricing for those said tags? Then would you be like, if there was more demand for say like antelope in your area where the population's been decreased, so it's much more difficult to find them, then you would set lesser tags for higher prices? Is that how that would work?
Yeah, it would be up to the local community and their local environment.
Okay.
So if something is more rare, like down here in Florida, alligators are no longer rare. They're no longer an endangered species, so we can give out more tags for them.
Right.
But when they're back
animals?
Tags to kill, to be able to kill.
Oh, tags, not tags.
Right.
Tags.
Saying
yeah.
that
Have you ever heard of a tag before, Jessica?
Yes, I grew up in a rural fucking town.
Just making sure. Just making sure.
I've heard of tags. I thought you said tax.
No.
Oh, tax.
We're not taxing the animals.
This is the difference. This is why I wanted to kind of establish that between the two. Like he's talking a tag that you pay for in order to be able to hunt the animal.
To hunt it, yeah.
Rather than having to pay licensing fees or other taxes for said animals, right? So this would help with wildlife control just in and of itself, right?
I know it. Yeah. I'm caught up now. Thank you.
Yeah. Because the local community would know what's best for their local ecosystem.
Right.
You know, like if they're like, hey, we rely on look at the Native Americans. Hey, we rely on the buffalo. Oh my gosh, all our buffalo are gone. Then what happened? A lot of them died because they didn't have a food source anymore. Why is that?
They were more apt to move.
To move. I wouldn't call the Trail of Tears moving, but
I mean, it's, you know, essentially it's infringing upon, so if you go out and you kill all of the animals out there, you're infringing upon the other person's right to be able to hunt that animal as well. And
Hunt to be able to
So
eat. To just
instead of like a fishing license to where, where I can catch an unlimited amount of fish and I deny people the right to use that resource, but instead have a tag saying, hey, I can catch 5 fish, then therefore I can catch 5 fish and leave enough for the rest of the people.
No, it sounds like
then a fish market, say, would have to produce an immense amount of tags, right, in order to do the fishing. But there are such thing as fish farms where people procreate fish on their own.
Fish farms are considered non-taxable because they're not wild fish.
You're manipulating it, right? That would be a man manipulating the situation, or woman. I'm just saying somebody is manipulating the situation to create more fish so they can sell. You say taxes and Jessica's fucking blood pressure goes up a little. Like that's why you got to be
pretty much.
You gotta be careful what context you use.
Just like a dairy farm or a slaughterhouse, you know, things like that. That's different than a wild cow, than a wild fish, and things like that. Aquaculturing, everything like that is the same thing as planting wheat. In essence.
Okay. It got really bright in my room.
The Geolibertarian light is shining on you right now, Jessica.
I need an umbrella.
He's like, they said too much. They said taxes too many times.
Right?
It's okay. I don't like the word either. And when I first read on land value tax, I was like a little skeptical. I was like, I don't know about this. I was like, okay, we're just gonna, I'm gonna see what it's about. And then when I realized that it's not really a tax, it's more like rent in a way, then I kind of was like, okay.
The basic way to put it is that I am not giving my rent to a private person. I'm giving my rent back to my community. Yeah. So
unless you're like living in somebody's privately owned building, then a little bit of that would go to them because it's their building, right?
Yes.
Right.
Yes. They're giving you amenities and services, having a building, yada yada.
Okay,
but
so then the only difference would be that this would just be a core focused, more local level way to establish your own parameters around government, which means locally Geolibertarians shouldn't recognize state government's ability to infringe upon their communities, considering they're self-sustaining, right?
Yes.
Right.
Okay.
So we're on board with the regular right-wing libertarians whenever it comes to the fact that we want to get rid of taxes and big government and what have you. But on the more local level, that's where we diverge in the fact that...
So for libertarians like Drew and I, who are very staunch, like, we want to live in the woods, leave us alone, go away. If we're not in any of these communities and we are just by ourselves in the mountains or in the desert by ourselves,
well, see, that's what they
then
said.
there's no one to tax us on the land that we're on.
Yes, but they did say it would be set up by county. And as far as I know, there's no non-county areas in the United States. There's either a parish or a county somewhere that covers said land, even though...
Well, then it's not voluntary.
Nobody's out there.
It's forcing people. It's forcing people to abide by the ideology that you like, which is authoritarian.
Like I said, this isn't an anarchist ideology. It's not. whenever I talk to anarchists, I have to sit there and disclaim.
Well, you told me right away, and I understand that. I'm trying to get
Right.
to understand the premise of it all,
Yeah.
you know. And to be
Right.
honest,
I
like,
understand it. I am
the
just
system
asking
is
questions
preferable
for
over the
people
current
that
one.
that
So
would
I'm
ask
already on
questions.
board because it's preferable to the
Right.
current one for sure. So I'm already on
Right.
board. As if it's
So-
something that I would that would not be my end game, possibly for me.
Right.
But then again, I like to call myself a little on the hiatus side because I've borderline property rights anarchist, somewhat minarchism kind of level for me.
Right.
You know, I like to
So
think of
this
it as I'm
is-
still exploring myself. So
I just
that's
want to
why
be
you
left
guys are
alone
here.
in the woods. That's my political ideology. I want to be left alone in the woods.
So this is the bridge. Henry George's ideology is the bridge between right libertarianism and left libertarianism.
Yeah.
It is. It's taking aspects of both and forming it into one coherent, non-hypocritical ideology.
Mhm.
Because even when with his most famous land value tax, one, it wasn't really his idea. He just made it very popular.
Mhm.
But
He decided to
even-
write it down on paper and like really like talk about it.
right,
Yeah.
actually place an economic theory behind it.
Mhm.
While other people have said it before, he placed an economic theory and proved it to be correct. And it's taking the best aspects, I believe, of both sides and placing it into one coherent ideology. And I'm not traditionally right-wing libertarian. I'm not. I do fall more in the middle. I'm more of a middle ground, and that's where Georgism is for me. It is a middle ground.
Yes, it
Mhm.
is very much so.
Well, then a lot of people would
Yeah.
benefit from listening to this episode because I'm going to let you know that the whole point of Newfound Liberty is for new people stumbling upon libertarianism to find where they fit, to find a part of anti-authoritarian, anti-force that they can find a little bit more comfortable. So I'm really glad that we did have this episode. I learned a lot today. So I thank you guys very much for coming on. I'd say we got ourselves about a good hour of stuff in, and I know that Jessica wanted to have a small segment at the end here known as our political rant. So, Jessica, why don't you go ahead and tell us what's going on in the world and what really grinds your gears?
Well, I wouldn't really call it a political rant. I would just call it like, I'm going to go with political rant so I don't piss people off. All right, it's political rant.
I feel like it's
So in case anyone is not active on TikTok, like I am, unfortunately, there's a good chance that a lot of people don't know what's happening in Canada and what has started happening here in America. So in Canada, in these residential Indian schools, which were built in the 1860s, and the last one stopped, like it was closed in 1996. I'm pretty sure all of us were alive in 1996.
Yep.
Matthew, right?
No, I was born in 1998.
Well, never mind for Matthew. He's the baby. Well, most of us were alive in 1996. They have found over 1,500 bodies of Native American children who were ripped from their families and forced into these basically conversion schools run by not just the Catholic Church. There were other churches that had them too, but they were government sanctioned. And it was, the idea behind it was a famous quote from one of the founders of one of these schools was, "Kill the Indian, save the man." And basically they wanted to kill all part of Native American culture and heritage that these children had and convert them to a more civilized white lifestyle. And a lot of these children were raped, starved, and murdered and buried on the property. In Canada, there's about 150 or 160 of these schools. Here we have over 350. They have looked at 6 schools so far in Canada, and they have found over 1,500 bodies. Now, I'm sure that there are more bodies on some of these schools, but those are the ones that they have found so far. And the reason why their parents couldn't go and get them, because up until the 1950s, for a Native American to leave their reservation, they had to get basically a permission slip from the government. And if they left without said permission slip, they were murdered or arrested. Here in the United States so far, we have looked at the Carlisle School, and they found 180 bodies of children who were basically kidnapped and murdered. So I highly suggest that everyone go and look into that and post about it and make it more well known, because a lot of people don't know what's going on and it's heartbreaking. So that's it. That's all I have
So
to say.
of these handful of churches that they've they've been investigating, each and every one they found bodies at?
Everyone.
Every fucking.
The highest number that they found at one school was 700 and I think 16 bodies. The first school that they looked into, they found 215.
Jesus.
Now, keep in mind, some of the youngest ones that they found have been 2 years old. These children were taken from their families, taken from their homes, and murdered. There's no other way to put it. They were murdered. And the Pope has been asked to speak about it. The Pope has refused. There's actually a Catholic church in Canada who just like made one of their sermons public, and he was talking about how this is just another way for people to persecute the church. I'm going to keep my religious views out of this. I'm just going to say that that's bullshit and that's deflection and that is a victim complex on a godly level.
Literally.
So I highly suggest that everyone look into it. Just look into the residential schools, but some of them are called residential Indian schools. Look into the ones if you have in your area, in your state, in your city, and start petitioning for people to look into them, because they need to be looked into. Every single one, I think you will find bodies.
That is just awful. That is terrible.
That's
Horrible. It's murder. Like it's the only way to explain it. It
It's
is
a form of
kidnapping
genocide.
and it is murder.
That's all it is genocide.
Yep.
oh,
Yep.
it's so genocide.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
So
no, I didn't know a
wouldn't
lot
call
about
it
it.
a
I saw
political rant.
that you were posting some things, but I didn't know 100% about what was going on. And then, of course, I have
Yeah,
seen that some
it's-
Catholic churches have been set fire to.
Here's the thing with the Catholic Church is burning. Originally, when I first saw it, I was like, oh, okay. But now that I've thought about it, I would not be surprised. Again, this is my own opinion. I would not be surprised if it is the church burning themselves in order to get rid of evidence and get rid of records.
Well, it could
It
be
wouldn't
one
be
of
the
it
first time
could
the church
potentially
is
be one of
fucking-
two things. It could be people's outlash and anger over what's actually happening with the Catholic churches right now, with all the information you presented and setting fire to them, or it is
Here's the thing.
what you had said as well.
Here's the thing though, with burning the churches, that is counterproductive to the cause, because they want to look into these churches, look into the walls, look into the basements, look into the records, look into the property to find anything they can about more children. Burning everything is counterproductive. The only person that benefits, the only entity that benefits would be the church.
True, but I mean, the average everyday person isn't exactly the sharpest, tool in the box. But
Yeah, but these aren't American Democrats who are just going to go and burn everything down. These are Native Americans that want to know what happened to their kids.
yeah, man, that is awful. Now I didn't know.
Sorry, guys, I'm
I
not
didn't-
trying to like shit talk on Democrats. I'm just saying like
It's
they
okay.
kind of just
I
burn
have
everything
to
down.
be one, and I should talk on them all the time.
Okay.
Yeah, I do. Too.
Yeah, I'm the used to be Republican here, so I'm the one in the room.
Yeah.
I'm that guy.
I've always been a libertarian person because I
All
turned
right,
18
OG.
in 2010 and turned 18 in 2010 and that's when I registered. So, but I did grow up in a very Republican town.
Yeah, I grew up in the deep South. I grew up in South Carolina, and both my parents are from Pennsylvania.
I grew up in a county that voted 79% Trump, so I get it.
Yeah, I feel like with Matthew and I's situation, that's why we've been able to be more middle of the road and more of a kind of like find the balance, because we've had to live around both sides. When you grow up in a house that's strongly Democratic, like my dad was a union worker, like he voted for Joe Biden, and I couldn't get him to not. Like my dad hates that I'm a libertarian, but.
Has he said anything about like just about every single one of Biden's promises going back on and then doubling down.
And he's just such an old fart, and he's so stuck in his ways. I don't think it's gonna change his mind about anything. To be honest, my parents are approaching 70, so they're boomers. They're like legit boomers. So I think with my sister and me talking to her a little bit more, I feel like he's becoming a little bit more open-minded to it. But he's a Democrat too, so I'm the black sheep of the family. So
Yeah, me too. I'm definitely the black sheep. I've had especially first coming upon libertarianism, man, I had so much rage in me. We coined Sean inability to preach non-aggression without doing it aggressively. That was me.
Oh, can we talk about blah 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 for a second to see if
yeah,
like any
sure,
of the
absolutely.
viewers would like to jump ship from Facebook?
Yeah.
So blah 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 is a great platform. It's set up exactly like OG Facebook. If you know how to work Facebook, you will know how to work blah blah blah. It is super easy, super user friendly, and there's no Zuckerberg. So I mean, it's a positive. Now, granted, yes, it does include signing up to a new social media platform, finding all your friends again, and going to groups that you would have had on Facebook, but get over it.
Sometimes make some of the groups that you liked on Facebook, but then you get to manipulate them how you want, right?
Exactly. Like there's the option on blah 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 to make your own groups. Like I made a group for all of us. You can do that. I highly recommend. It's kind of like the duopoly, like people who bitch about the duopoly but then still vote for it. If you're bitching about Facebook but not at least trying other platforms, you're just bitching to bit.
I like blah 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 a lot. I've been trying to post more on there than I do Facebook.
And the owners are really, really cool.
If there's any problem on there, they instantly message you. Like you can always ask them or comment on one of their posts, and they'll instantly get a hold of you and try to fix whatever the issue is that you're having. So really good customer service.
And they don't have fact checkers.
No, like you post what you want, like.
The fact checkers.
I love it when they fact check a joke. Like they just have to throw a fact check in below what's clearly a joke.
Do you guys remember the time I shared? It wasn't even really a meme, but like it was just a screenshot saying how like usually when a government takes your guns, that leads to not so good things. And the fact checker checked me and they were like, there is no correlation between taking guns and dictatorship.
I don't know of a dictatorship with a well-armed population.
Right? Exactly. I'm like, these fact checkers have never read a history book.
I don't know. The Cambodians will say otherwise. I can name a few others.
Right?
Otherwise.
I mean, I'm Jewish. I can name I can name
We can name a big one.
I'm German, so sorry about that.
You don't have nothing to apologize for. You didn't fucking do it.
I demand reparations.
You demand reparations.
It cracks me up when I find out that my ancestors were part of the Reich.
But you didn't do it. You personally didn't do it.
Hey, my ancestors were Vikings, for crying out loud, okay? We are the rapists, pillaging sons of fucking bitches. That's like all down my bloodline, okay?
The only reason I would ever hold that against you is if you still subscribed to that ideology.
Right.
That's it.
I'm gonna be like, I'm gonna build a boat and I'm gonna sail to Cuba.
Matthew and I are both Jews, and we're telling you it's fine. Like you didn't do it.
Yeah, my people got plenty of reparations.
Oh Lord.
We got a whole
Except for the fact that like all of these fucking Holocaust, like all these concentration camp tourist exhibits still have like teeth and hair and clothes they refuse to give back to the families. But that's fine. It's a tourist destination. It's fine.
What?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Take a picture, move on, give it back.
Yep. But no, they've literally told people who have asked for that stuff back, and they're just like, no, we own it now.
That's extortion?
That's evil, but whatever.
That's not profiteering off of the pain of others.
Right? Exactly. Like, hey, why don't you come to this camp that like our government built a long time ago and then like see all the teeth and the hair and the clothes that like we tortured people. It's fine. A great place to bring the family. Summer vacation. So if you can't tell, I'm a little.
It's got fucking Yelp reviews, for crying out loud.
Yeah, I'm a little salty about that. Just a little bit.
Okay. Good God.
So there's 2 political rants.
There's a couple.
Yeah.
But usually we have a lot of fun with the little political rant section we do
were
here on
just
Newfound.
ranting about genocide. That
Right?
was
Exactly.
I feel like
Sean, are you proud of me though? I didn't go off on any segues like last time when I started talking about like the whoopee cushion and the Tesla.
Yes, but that was such a fun segue. I'm not gonna lie. We do go off topic
I know, but I
a
didn't
bit,
go off
but
on
it's a
any
lot
segues.
of fun.
I'm getting better.
This one was a little morbid. Not gonna lie, compared to the last one.
Well,
But I
you
think
know
it was
what?
a very
People need to
important
know.
one to state. Very important one to state, and people need to know.
People need to know about what's going on because a lot of people aren't on TikTok. I'm only on TikTok because my fucking 18-year-old sister made me download it.
Yeah. Well,
And
the 4 people
if it
who
wasn't
watch
for
this
TikTok,
show
I would have
will
no
now
idea.
know. The 4 people who watch this show will now know.
Yes, good.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in. This has been another wonderful segment of Newfound Liberty. And we will see you until next time. Bye, everybody.
Thank you guys. Bye, guys.